I think adults were born since that was last true, by user substantial term 3843. Not a shop story this time. Me, and family member or FM. FM, I've been trying to get this second PC installed and it won't work. FM has inherited a PC and is trying to reinstall Windows. He's calling after apparently 3 hours of failure and is not hiding his frustration. Sigh. He's actually not completely hopeless with computers, so I indulge with this non-trivial problem. This is probably around 2013. Me, okay, so what are you trying to do exactly? FM, install Windows onto this machine. Me, and what have you tried so far? FM, I've copied all the files over and it won't boot up. Me, copied them over? From what? FM, my old PC. Me, what, like with an image? Surprising, but not impossible. You restored a backup. FM, yes, I copied everything over and it doesn't boot. So I start thinking along the lines of repair install with drivers while he rambles on a bit. Both machines are XP, new PC is old but not as old as his original one. Is x64 but will take his x86 OS if drivers are available, which they still should be. Not insurmountable. Me, okay, if you bring it over I don't mind doing it. FM, I can do it. I'm not an idiot. I don't need you to do it for me. Yet you are 3 hours into this, and you have called for my help. Me, okay, there's only so much I can do over the phone. You've moved an OS from one set of hardware to a very different another. I'm not surprised it's not booting. If you can get drivers and an XP CD I can talk you through a repair installation. FM, I shouldn't need to do all that. It should just work. Me, it won't necessarily, you'd be quite lucky if it did. FM, but that's how it should work. I know what I'm doing. And yet, 3 hours and 10 minutes now and I'm trying my best. Me, Windows does tie itself to the hardware, there are dependencies, things it relies on. A repair will go through introducing your old OS to your new hardware, for want of a better term, so they can work together. FM, but I've copied all the files over, it should just work. Me, what did you use, what software did you image your PC with? All it does usually is clone the disk. It wouldn't make any difference if you physically swapped the hard drive. You haven't done anything to. FM, I don't need to. I've formatted the disk and copied the files. Me, with what? I name some imaging software off the top of my head to nudge him. FM, no, none of that. I've formatted the disk and copied the files onto it. Me, what, like drag and drop? Oh my. Oh no, you didn't. You. Tool of a folk. So. Not completely useless with PCs, but now I remember sitting on his bookshelf, as they probably are to this day, the large paperback books with the titles on the spine MS-DOS 4, MS-DOS 5 and MS-DOS 6.22. He's done something like format A/S or whatever it is, hasn't he? Me, right, no, it's a bit more complicated than that. FM, no it isn't. That's how it works. It's always been that way. Me, it used to be, yes, but... FM, you just format the disk and copy the system files. It's always been that way. Me, yes, it was, I'm not disagreeing with you. But these days... ranty RA. We go round in circles for another 10 minutes. Well, spiral into madness. He's busting out every outdated bit of trivia and popular misconception he can grasp at while I try to explain the progress of computing. FM, Windows is just a GUI for DOS, and etc. Me, not anymore. FM, you're just patronizing me. You're being really mean and I'm really upset now. Me, what? You called me for help. FM, and you're not giving me any, you're just being patronizing and making fun of me. Me, sorry I can't help you then, I'm going now, and I hang up. By Christ of the Weeping Jesus. I don't see him for a while, things settle. We have some old PCs at work that are functional but not of any value, so I give him one. We've been discussing Linux since either I mentioned it or he found it for himself online. I tell him clearly there's a known issue on the DVD-ROM and not to rely on it, find a USB tool for whichever distro he goes with. FM, I can't install Linux. Me, did you use a CD? FM, yes, I downloaded and burnt a. Me, I said the drive has issues, use a USB installer. FM, I don't think that's the problem. I take it home and install something for him. with a USB stick. I think it was Linux Mint, but later on he managed to get Ubuntu on it himself. Some time later, he and Mum take me out for a birthday meal. This is how I discover he's been converted. Like joined the cult levels of Linux worship, genuine and frightening anger towards Microsoft, and impervious to facts and reason. FM, Microsoft are all BS, they just want your money and rip you off. Me, is this still about you trying to drag and drop XP onto a blank disk? FM, they're just evil money grabbing BS, all they do is take your money and then force the next version of Windows on you so you have to spend it all over again. Me, I think you've described their business model accurately, but it is also born of the necessities of progress. FM, they should just release one version of Windows and keep supporting that. I don't really want to be getting into this, so I don't bother to ask which funky ferret or gasping goblin he's running. FM, they should just make one version and support that forever. Or whether it's the LTS release, 5 years support, or standard, 18 months support. FM, Microsoft force you to do everything their way, you can do anything in Linux. Or if he's tried formatting a disk and drag and dropping his Ubuntu install on it. Mum is furious enough with him as it is for going on about it at my birthday in the restaurant, so I say nothing, until later when she tells me he's been whinging and moaning about it at home for ages and she's begging him to STFU. I tell her the above thoughts I kept to myself. She's laughing her ass off. I see it's less about the story and rebuttal as it is the release of frustration. Please, please let me be humble and learn to accept my day when it is time. Let me be not proud. Let me ask for help from generations hence and accept it graciously. We refuse to be involved with you any longer, by user Dictionary 600. I once worked with a company that put vending and arcade machines on locations. Basically, when a location doesn't own their own machines, usually places like restaurants and bars, a company like this either rents a space for said machine for a flat rate to the location owner, or splits the actual profits from the machine with the location owner. This is not the same place that had idiotic techs working for it, that was a store that sold arcade machines. One day, we got a call from a restaurant that our entire row of games had stopped working. Okay, that sounds more like a blown breaker in the building than a problem with any of our games. The location owner responded that he tried turning the breaker back on, but it instantly blew again. We offered to check our machines just to be sure, though we were skeptical that it was anything to do with us. Many arcade and vending machines will have their own fuses, either buried inside the machine, or in a separate little fuse holder in the back, near the power cord. So it seems unlikely that anything to do with our games, except a munched power cord, could actually take down a branch circuit. Without going into great detail, I arrived and checked the power cords, which was easy since the machines had already been moved back from the wall. The power cords are fine. A few of our machines have an external fuse holder, so on a hunch, I pop one of them out. Some idiot had wrapped tinfoil around the fuse on this machine. All of our techs at this place were well aware of what a fuse is for, and why this is a terrible idea. We always checked fuses on any machine that was new to us. I took pictures for my boss. The two other machines that had external fuse holders had the exact same thing done to them. The kicker was that only one of those machines even had a blown fuse, the other two were fine. I looked inside the machine where the blown fuse was bypassed, and there were several melted wires and the power supply board was fried. I took pictures of that as well. I delivered the boss the bad news, that game had several burned parts and there may be other unseen damage to the motherboard as well, and we wouldn't know until we replaced the obviously bad parts. The power supply board had actual traces burned, so it would need to be entirely replaced. The restaurant owner had cut corners in other ways while running the restaurant, and in this case, when game blacked out on a customer, he just popped out the fuse holder rather than calling the vending company, us, and then wrapped the fuse in tinfoil, rather than replacing it with the proper type. He then proceeded to do the same thing with the other two machines that had external fuse holders accessible from behind. The restaurant owner wouldn't have had to pay a dime for any repairs to the machines, anyway, so we really didn't get why he would do this. We never even gave keys to any location owner, partly to prevent them from screwing stuff up. Once the boss found out what had been done with the machines, he put in a priority work order to remove all of our machines from that restaurant before they burn the place down and take our machines with them. The restaurant surprisingly never burned down, but they did eventually go out of business after multiple code violations were discovered. I was not at all surprised. TLDR, restaurant owner tries to fix someone else's arcade machine by bypassing the fuse, ends up making it worse. Also goes for double jeopardy by fixing the ones that aren't even broken. Restaurant ends up getting fired as a client due to their repairs. This is a stupid idea, I am a fool to have thought of it. Worked though, by user substantial term 3843. Not a shop story, but a customer I met through working there. Could be any time from 2008 ISH onward. Customer had an Apple laptop with a failing disk. I tried everything I could to get data off it. USB bridge to my own MacBook, directly connected to a PC with Linux or Windows HFS mount tools, various professional data recovery tools we downloaded off the internet at the shop. I managed to get some files back but not all of what customer was hoping for. I noticed one of these tools was making something like 5 attempts to read the file, timing out and giving up. Running the tool again maybe grabbed some different files but wasn't going to be time/cost effective to just repeat it and hope for the best, scanning the entire disk for hours each time. This gave me the idea to try something, similar to the data recovery tool but with the opposite intention. To transfer a file assuming it would take ages, or if it did fail to be able to set that file aside for another attempt, and not to waste time redoing successfully copied files. I'd seen something do this already. I still can't believe this worked. But after 2 weeks of using FileZilla to FTP to a local hard drive I had pretty much everything customer wanted. Wake up in the morning, requeue failed transfers, leave it for another couple of days, field another call or two from customer no it's still running, yes still getting more files though. Yes, I've tried it again since. No, this is the only time it ever worked. Eventually I'm able to go round with what I have, customer agreed whatever I'd got by then was good enough, and was probably 90% or more of what was there. We sit around the kitchen table while his 8 ISH-year-old children hang out playing. He's very pleased looking through what has been recovered. And then he gives me one of my life's old moments. Customer, I'm so glad you managed to get these back, all the pictures I have of my children are digital. I don't have any physical photos at all. I glance at his kids, then back to him. I recall my days in the dark room at college doing photography. Red light, trays of chemicals etc. Oh noes. I checked myself and yes I can still remember it off by heart, by user substantial term 3843. Thank you all so much for the positive feedback and awards across my other posts. I've only been contributing for a couple of weeks but it means a great deal and encourages me to churn out more. Edit, Gold and Platinum. I'm going to have to go and find out what that means but I believe it's customary to edit a post to say thanks for these. Also fixed the doctor quote in the story. I introduced colleague to my boss and that's how he got the job. Years before I'd been round to see colleague or see one evening, he was tearing his hair out trying to get a PC set up. It was one of those 1 step forward 2 steps back nights for him. He had no home internet and this was before smartphones or mobile internet were common. I don't remember the specifics but you'll get the idea of the spiral he was in. See, why won't the XP installer see my hard drives? Me, what does it say in the BIOS? C, SEN/TEB, at number ACUD. Me, IDE conflict, check your jumpers on both hard drives, for he had two. C pulls the drives and cables out and examines them, corrects the jumper settings. C, cool it shows up properly as Seagate Barracuda now. And whatever the other one was. C proceeds to install. C, it's bombed out. Why did the install fail? Me, test the HDD. C runs a disk diagnostic but it doesn't yield a pass/fail. There was a fault trying to test it at all. Me, unplug one of the hard drives and try with the minimum plugged in. C pulls drives and cables out again, unplugs one drive. C, it's still failing. Me, okay well we didn't get a valid test before, let's try the diagram tool again. C, it's still not able to test the drive properly. Me, try the other drive. C pulls drives and cables out again, swaps them over. C, install failing on this one too. Me, right, test that drive. C, same thing. Still can't run the test. You can imagine he's been at it since before I arrived, poor thing. Nothing makes sense, nothing works, he's started going through the 5 stages of grief I think. Denial, anger, and depression certainly. He's absolutely miserable after hours into the endeavor. Me, C is glum. He wants his PC to work. It doesn't. He can't fix it. He is very sad. He is a forlorn puppy, tired and defeated. Me, sorry dude. Not much else I can think of without internet to research or download anything. See, yeah I know, no worries, thanks for trying. I do not like this either. I am autistic, though I won't know that for another decade and a half. My brain sees a problem and it has the raw, biological impulse to solve it. I must fix it. It is wrong, it must be made right. Some people have called me helpful, some have called me kind even. If you say so, but that's not what is going on upstairs. I'm glad it benefits others if I can, but it's coincidental to me. One of the most aggravating things for me is when someone says they have a problem with their computer but say no, it's fine, I'll deal with it or get a new one, but I have cables. I have components. It's the lizard part of my brain. Before thought, before feeling, like the defensive systems wired directly into the nervous system that make you shut your eye before something hits it or to release something picked up much hotter than expected. As the spider waits, as the rabbit flees. Devoid of cunning or cruelty, simply fix. No words, no concepts, just fix. There is no U/substantial term 3843, only Z you'll fix. Without hope, without witness, without reward. Hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary development gaze down upon the open tower. Untold generations of neurological divergence stare blankly over the motherboard, the jumpers, the drives, the ripples of ribbon cables. Something pure, something of the divine speaks to me through the static and the tinnitus. I achieve Senin mode. Fix it, 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 fi. Me, if the cables weren't knackered before all that plugging and unplugging won't have helped, have you got another IDE cable? C gasps, C scurries. C replaces the ribbon cable. C, OMG it's working. OMG it's installing. OMG dude it's happening. OMG. OMG. C is ecstatic. C is back from the brink. C was lost in the dark forest as Dante was, but C gets to skip all that. C is in his own little world, mumbling gratitude but utterly captured in that familiar old screen, the blue background, the green progress bar, the primary colors of the Windows logo. C is awash with tranquility. C is presented with the prompt for the product key. C wails, a moan of heartbreaking calamity. C, to no one, I don't suppose anyone has an XP license key. C has arrived at bargaining, but C is bereft. No eye contact, no expectation. C approaches acceptance. Me, still placid and blank-faced, C, uncomprehending, what? I nod toward the keyboard. Me, C dares not to hope, but eyes wide takes direction and begins typing. Me, no pqrstu vuxi. C presses enter. C remains silent. C needs a moment. C barely breathes for the remainder, but soon enough, he is welcome. And it's blue skies, fluffy white clouds and rolling green hills once more. DOPAMINES. A miscommunication that really heats things up, by user Dictionary 600. I worked at a vending company that placed vending and arcade machines at locations like restaurants, bars, and similar in exchange for either paying a fixed rent to the location owner or splitting the profits with the location owner. They also rented machines out for events and parties and such. This place for the most part had actual competent techs working for it. Unfortunately, I wasn't so great at helping to move large items, and they needed that more than they needed a full-time tech due to their rentals and events, therefore I had a relatively short period of employment there. One day, we got a call from a bar that our shooting game was initially starting up okay when they turned it on upon opening up the bar, but later on it would black out and show no signal on the screen. Yes, some arcade monitors do that. We knew by the title, that this was one of those games that had a computer tower inside acting as the brain of the game rather than a custom arcade motherboard. This also meant that the tower in some cases used a standard ATX power supply, which we had several of laying round as spares for these types of games. After finding a power supply and verifying it worked using our tester, I headed over to the bar. It was soon enough after opening that the machine had not shut itself down yet, but I decided to do some exploratory surgery on it rather than just wait around for it to go wrong. I opened the back cover with the key, and thankfully, there is plenty of room around the tower to take its cover off while it's still in place. I popped the cover off, and I saw that the CPU fan wasn't turning anymore. Well, darn. I don't think we have a spare of that. On the other hand, we caught it before the actual CPU failed, score 1 for whoever designed this motherboard. Clearly the computer was going into thermal shutdown. I noted in the ticket that the CPU fan was broken, and I took pictures of both the fan itself and the model number on the computer tower case, so that we could figure out what fan to order, or find a broken tower of the same model to pull a fan from. Even with thermal throttling and shutdown, it's not wise to continue to run something that has improper cooling, because hitting the upper limit repeatedly is still a good way to cause failure sooner or later. The machine had a removable power cord, so I decided to take it with me, and let the bar manager know the reason I was taking it with me. He appeared to understand, so I went on my way. I also made a call to the boss and explained the whole thing. Fast forward about 4 weeks. While I was out replacing the monitor on another machine in a different location, I got a call from my boss. He said that, same shooting game, is broken down at address, and just showing no signal on the screen. The address sounded familiar, but I didn't make the connection in the moment. As I got closer to the location, the realization hit that it's the same one I had found the fan broken in. But how did they even get to the point of saying no signal? I entered the bar, and just as I suspected, there was another power cord attached and plugged in. Sure enough, the screen is saying no signal. I tried to reboot it, however, instead of the single short beep that this machine usually made on startup, I get an ominous series of long beeps. I forget what the pattern was offhand, but it wasn't what you would want to hear when booting up a computer. I took the back cover off again and found that whoever put the new power cord on hadn't even closed up the tower, so it was still open. More importantly, the fan was still broken, so the CPU had been started and forced to run up to its limits multiple times. Normally, I would try reseating the RAM and possibly the CPU and graphics card to see if that fixes the problem. My hope of that working here was quite thin, knowing what's happened, but I might as well try something while I'm here. I pulled out the RAM first, AMD put it back in. No change. Then I tried the graphics card. No change. The thing I saved for last, because it's not a pleasant task due to the thermal paste, is the CPU. Well, whatever, I might as well get it over with. So, I unscrewed the heatsink, removed it, undid the lock on the CPU socket and removed the CPU, then put it back in and reattached the heatsink. Lights, camera, action. Power on end, just as I suspected, no change. I get the same error beeps. Drat. I called my boss to see if he knew anything about the power cord finding its way back to the bar. It turns out that he had gotten a call that the power cord is missing, and he had just sent one of the other employees out there with another power cord, and that guy had just plugged it in, and when it booted up in front of him he, understandably, assumed all was well. However, neither that employee or my boss had bothered to look at the ticket. The restaurant manager didn't mention anything either, and apparently assumed the problem was fixed or forgot what I had said, and didn't unplug the machine. I calmly reminded my boss to check the ticket from 4 weeks ago that had my name on it. After a moment of silence on his part, he surprisingly doesn't find a way to blame me, for once. Score 1 for him, but that's about all he got due to his generally poor attitude. Well, maybe 2 because he wouldn't have stood for the kind of crap that went on at the other game room store I had worked for previously. The guy who didn't look at the ticket got an earful from the boss, but I don't think that was entirely fair because the boss could have checked the ticket himself, or the call taker if it wasn't the boss. I don't know who picked up the power cord is missing call. I told that employee that I didn't blame him. TLDR, the crap hit the fan, but the fan wasn't working anymore, so the crap just stayed there.